Good evening and welcome. Thanks to everyone for joining us tonight. My name is Caitlin Patton. I'm the Executive Director of the National Music Festival and your host for this evening's edition of Festival Forum. With me tonight is Jennifer Parker-Harley, who has been the flute mentor for the National Music Festival ever since our very first season in 2011. Jennifer, thanks so much for joining us. It's great to be with you this evening.
Great to see you as well. Nice to be here. Thank you.
We have really missed having you and all the other mentors and apprentices in Chestertown this summer and last summer. What has the pandemic been like for you musically?
Well, not ideal, right?
Yeah.
So I think we all, learned many new things. We learned how to give lessons on Zoom. Maybe learn some new ways of collaborating. But I think something that's been really hard is that we haven't been able to play together. Yeah. And I know for me and with the students I work with, we realized maybe what a huge part of our careers that kind of in-person collaboration is. I mean, everybody who plays music knows that that's one of the most satisfying parts of being a musician is connecting through music with other people. But when it's taken away, you realize that kind of on a different scale. Yeah. So we've really missed not being in Chestertown, and even here with my students, not being able to play in the same room, not being able to do chamber music, so that we've missed the collaboration a lot.
Yeah.
And are really looking forward to, it's starting to open back up. We're a little unsure how things, what we should be doing exactly these days, but, does appear that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, which we're looking forward to.
Absolutely. Yes, we are looking forward to having you back in Chestertown. And I should say for everyone listening that the festival next year is scheduled for June 5th through the 18th, 2022. So those are dates we look forward to more than I can possibly describe. So we have a few musical excerpts to share this evening in addition to chatting. So I thought we'd start with some music and then we'll talk a little bit more about your involvement in the festival. So this first recording that we're going to play from the times when we could perform together in person. This is actually from several years ago. This is a recording from June 11th of 2013. And this is the third and final movement of the Mozart Concerto for Flute and Harp, with you, of course, Jennifer, as one of the soloists, along with our then harp mentor, Dickie Fleischer. And this performance was conducted by Marchena Diakun, who was a conducting apprentice that year. And Marchena was actually to have returned to NMF in 2020 as a guest conductor if we hadn't had to, well, if the pandemic hadn't happened. But we look forward to having her back in Chestertown in some future season. So let's enjoy some Mozart. That's a beautiful piece.
It is. It's a lot of fun to play.
Yes, and I'm sorry about the internet issue we had there, but hopefully everyone got to hear the entire excerpt once we started over.
We're used to these kinds of difficulties now. We know how to deal with them, right?
That's true. Yes, with everything on Zoom this past year and a half, I guess we've gotten used to it.
Right. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your involvement over the last 10 years with the National Music Festival. It's hard to believe it's been 10 years already.
Yeah.
But we're so fortunate that you keep coming back to the festival every season. We're so lucky to have you. And I'm wondering, what is it that keeps you coming back summer after summer?
Well, I feel very lucky that you and Richard continue to invite me back. It's, it's always something I look forward to. I think, there's several things that make it such a special time. One of those is Chestertown, which is, sorry, my dog just joined us, I think. It's just such a beautiful, picturesque town. The people are wonderful. The hosts I've had have been fantastic. And, many of them I keep up with from year to year and between the festivals. And just to be somewhere where the town is so supportive is really fantastic. And it makes for such a great experience all around. And then, of course, the colleagues that also return every year. We've gotten to be good friends and also keep up during the year. And many of us have brought our children. So my children have grown up coming to Chestertown in the summers. And, just all around from every angle, it's been a fantastic experience.
We are lucky to have such an incredibly supportive audience. I'm grateful for that every season.
Yeah, it really makes a difference when you're sitting in the orchestra or on the stage and you can feel the energy and the excitement and the enthusiasm coming from the people sitting there listening. It makes a huge difference.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what it's like for you to work with your apprentices at NMF.
So, that has always been a fantastic experience. These are students who, are 18 to, I guess, maybe somewhere around 25 to 30 years old. They're so serious about their pursuit of music and, open to suggestion, open to different ideas, willing to work really hard. And they all have come with fantastic attitudes. It's also, always interesting because most of them are coming from schools other than where I teach during the year. So I get to learn about their backgrounds and what's going on in their part of the world. And it's always a great collaboration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you mentioned they're always willing to work hard, and I know that everyone does work very hard. It's a pretty intense schedule of rehearsals and performances during the festival.
Right, but I think that's what people come wanting. During the year, especially in an academic environment that many of these students are coming from, you just don't get to rehearse that much sometimes. So to be able to devote all of the time to orchestra music and chamber music without the distractions of other classes or just, kind of daily life responsibilities is really great. And I think the students are kind of hungry for that. Mm-hmm. It's also been, since NMF allows students to return a second year, it's also been great to be able to see students come back and see their growth over the years and to get to know them a little better that way as well.
Yeah, that's one thing that's I think very exciting now that we're 10 years old. We have alumni, who were here for the first couple of seasons, who are doing so well in their careers now. And it's just wonderful to watch their careers evolve after they leave NMF.
Right. Yeah, that is very exciting. I can think of several of the flute apprentices who are, out there working in the field. And like you said, that's great to see.
It is. It's really wonderful. So let's listen to a little bit more music, hopefully without any interruption this time. If we do get interrupted again, I promise I'll be right back, but hopefully that won't happen this time. So we were just talking about how lucky we are here to have such a great audience that's really supportive. And one of the things that I love about the audiences who come to NMF is their willingness to listen and enjoy pieces that are maybe not as commonly heard. So this next piece that we're going to hear, this is a piece by Mario Davidowski. It's called Synchronisms #1. Was recorded during the 2018 season of the National Music Festival on June 5th, 2018. This was the first of 12 of these synchronisms that Davidowski wrote. We've done a few of the others at NMF as well, but each is written for solo instrument or ensemble to perform live, but synchronized with pre-recorded synthesized sounds. So I think this is a really neat piece, and I hope everyone enjoys hearing it. That's such a cool piece.
Yeah, definitely a contrast to the Mozart.
Yes. Yeah. And, you know, we were talking earlier about during the pandemic, you know, how we all miss actually performing together, you know, but that piece is such a totally different thing. It must be quite challenging to perform live with something that's pre-recorded.
Yeah. Uh-oh, you're frozen. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, that piece is very challenging for many reasons. You know, first of all, to synchronize with the electronic sound is difficult and requires, you know, learning obviously the flute part, but also learning the electronic part well enough to tell, you know, if you're kind of playing at the correct times. But then also, you know, that Davidowski really calls on the flutist and the instrument to kind of push the instrument to its limits in every way. So with range, with dynamics, with articulations. So whereas with Mozart, you know, we're trying to play with a beautiful sound and a very finely crafted phrase, this is something entirely different. You know, how many different sounds can I get out of this silver tube? You know, how much contrast, how many possibilities. And so it's a different kind of mindset and definitely a challenge. That was the first piece written for flute and electronics. Now there are many of those pieces. But that was the first one. So it's always interesting to hear that and then, you know, kind of know what that piece is like and then listen to other electroacoustic music for flute that's been written since then. But one of the things that one of the performances that inspired me to learn that piece was Camilo's performance of the synchronism for guitar, which I think was the year before or maybe 2 years before, and was just, you know, as always, when he plays, it was fantastic. And to hear all of the colors that he drew out of the instrument was really, you know, kind of unforgettable. So that's one of the reasons I thought, oh, I want to learn the flute synchronism. Yeah.
That's wonderful. I had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm curious to know, and I've been asking all the mentors this because it's a question that I'm always interested in whenever I'm interacting with musicians, but I'm curious to know when you started playing the flute and how you chose the flute as your instrument.
So my dad was a band director and my mom is also a musician. So I grew up, you know, around music. I'm an only child, so I read books and played music when I was growing up. And I think you probably know what I mean, Caitlin, right?
I do, yeah.
And so my dad, I used to go to his band rehearsals with him. And when I was really little, maybe 3 or 4, there was one of his students who played the flute that I really liked. She was always very nice to me when I would come to rehearsal. So I think that's actually what first got me interested in the flute. And then when I was about in second grade, my dad gave me a flute and taught me how to make a sound. I didn't really start to play. I just kind of learned how to make a sound on the head joint and then put it in the case and didn't really touch it for several years. I was playing piano at that point, which I'm so grateful for that I had that background on a keyboard instrument. But then I started playing flute more regularly in the sixth grade and at my public school in the band program. And I had a wonderful band director who was, very nurturing and very enthusiastic. And there were several other really great flute players that were learning along with me. And so it was a great community to learn in. And that's when I became really serious about playing the flute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So was it kind of from that point on that you knew you wanted to be a professional musician?
Yeah. I remember about that time watching TV with my dad and the show Taxi came on. And there's a flute solo in the theme song. And I remember saying to my dad, I want to be the person who plays the theme music for TV shows. And he said, oh, well, that's called a studio musician. And so, I never, that did not become my career path, but I do remember early on, thinking that it was kind of a given that I wanted to go into music. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what did that path look like for you, after playing flute and band in school? Presumably you studied flute in college.
Yeah. So I grew up here in South Carolina where I currently live. But I was really fortunate and able to go to the Interlochen Arts Academy for my last 2 years of high school. And that was fantastic just to be around like-minded people at that age and have, wonderful flute teachers and just be in the atmosphere of people who were so passionate about not only music, but all of the other arts as well. So I spent my last 2 years of high school there, and then I went to the Eastman School of Music, where I studied with Benita Boyd, and who's wonderful. I couldn't possibly say enough wonderful things about her. From there, I went to Michigan State University. So when I was living in Rochester and going to school at Eastman, I got to know the principal flutist of the Rochester Philharmonic. His name is Rick Sherman, and he left to go teach at Michigan State. It just so happened that Bonnie, my teacher, was out on maternity leave for my first semester of my senior year. And so Rick was our teacher. And he found out he was going to be taking this job and asked me if I would like to go with him and be his teaching assistant. And so I didn't have any plans, and I really liked studying with him. And so I moved back to Michigan, different part of the state than Interlochen, but was there for 2 years and then left there to study at the Cincinnati Conservatory of Music, where I got my doctorate. And from Cincinnati, I taught in a little college, liberal arts college in northern Indiana called Goshen College. I taught flute and aural skills. And then about a month after school started, I got a position in the Fort Wayne Philharmonic, which was an hour from Goshen. So I would teach during the day and drive down to Fort Wayne at night and play there. So I was there for 1.5 years and then moved to Columbus, Ohio, where I played in the orchestra for 8 years. And then my husband, who's a bassoonist, who also comes to NMF for the Bassoon Institute, was teaching at Ohio University. And so that's 80 miles from Columbus. And he was driving 160 miles round trip every day, which was getting old in the snow. And so when this position at the University of South Carolina opened up, I knew the state. I have family here. At the time, my grandparents were still living, so it made sense to come back here, and it's been really wonderful. We've loved living here and working at the university here.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And when you're not playing music, what sorts of things do you like to do with your time? A spare time, what is that, right?
Right. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be a lot of spare time, but in the little that we do have, we love to travel. This summer, because the places we usually teach, like NMF, and I also usually teach at Interlochen, those things weren't happening, and so we found ourselves with kind of an empty summer, and so we drove around the country. We started here in South Carolina, and we drove to Little Rock, Arkansas, Santa Fe, New Mexico, hiked in the Grand Canyon, went water rafting and on the Rio Grande, saw Arches National Park, went to LA, drove up Highway 1, all the way to Seattle. Along the way, we did some sea kayaking, and we spent the night in the redwoods, and then we made our way home through Yellowstone and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and then back. So we had 7 weeks to do that, and it was fantastic. And we're looking forward to the next opportunity to travel.
Sounds like an amazing trip.
It was kind of the trip of a lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful. At least something good came out of not being able to have festivals.
Right. Yeah. Well, we really missed being in Chestertown, and are so excited about the possibility of being back in 2022.
Yeah, we are too. And, we keep saying, surely by June 2022, things will be somewhat back to normal.
Whoever dreamed that we would be dealing with this for such a long time. But.
Right. Yes, I know. I was just thinking the other day about, when we first kind of went into lockdown, and people were saying, oh, it's just going to be a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Right.
So yes, here we are. I feel like I barely left my house for a year and a half.
Right.
So that's okay. But yes, we very much look forward to having everyone back in Chestertown next year. So we have one more musical excerpt to share this evening, and then after that, I have one last question for you tonight. But this last piece that we're going to share tonight, this is one section of a work by Valerie Coleman called Hair, Cloth, and Thread. This is a performance from June 7th, 2018. With you, Jennifer, along with Michelle Humphreys, was the percussionist for this performance. That is also a very cool piece.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun to work on. I mean, I always absolutely adore Michelle, and I always love playing with her. And also Valerie Coleman is a friend that I've gotten to know through the Flute world, and she's been here at the University of South Carolina many times as a guest. And so it's always really special to play something written by someone that you admire and respect. So that was a really memorable performance.
Yeah, that's great. So that's a great segue into my final question for you this evening, because I know you have a great interest in contemporary music. And I wonder if you could share a little bit about what it's like to prepare and perform a piece of new music, whether it's completely new and you're preparing for a premiere, or whether it's been performed before but maybe hasn't necessarily been recorded or isn't that familiar. What is that like?
Well, I think it, I love learning, just the process of learning any music is something that I've always really enjoyed. And when it's contemporary music, it feels sometimes like there's a little more freedom because there's not a tradition associated with how it's played. And tradition, is very important in classical music, and something that we at the very least have to acknowledge when we're playing something, a kind of a standard from the canon. But when I'm learning contemporary music, it feels like there's a little more room sometimes for my own interpretation, for my own stamp, kind of creating something fresh and new. Not to say that the masterpieces can't also feel that way, but it's a little more explicit, that feeling, I think, when learning contemporary music. And it calls on the flutist often to do to learn new techniques, to try to figure out new notation. There's a lot of room for collaborating with the composers sometimes. And so it is very exciting because it feels sort of like you're bringing something new to life.
Yeah.
So it's something that I've always enjoyed. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really.
And yeah. And then just thinking about, well, I played the Book Concerto several years ago, well, two or 3 years ago at NMF, which was maybe one of the most challenging things I've ever played. And for several reasons. It was very technically demanding. It was rhythmically demanding. It was demanding in the sense of the interplay between the soloist and the orchestra. But then also, he asked for the flutist to do some things we generally aren't asked to do. At one point, I had to walk to the back of the orchestra while I was playing, which, I never was in marching band. Maybe that was why it was a challenge. But to play and walk and not trip over anything was, that called on some new skills for me. So, yeah, but it was really fun to be able to do that piece. And yeah, one of my best memories of NMF.
Yeah, I remember that concert very well. It was amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, thank you so much for being with us tonight. It's been a great pleasure to talk with you and hear some music and bring back some memories from past seasons, and look forward to making some more music in Chestertown next year, I hope.
Yeah, really looking forward to that. Great to see you, Caitlin. And yes, can't wait for June 5th.
Yes. Great. Well, have a good evening, Jennifer. Thanks again. Really appreciate you being part of the Festival Forum series with us. And look forward to seeing you in person.
Yes, definitely. Take care.
You too. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.